Hello again, and welcome back to AP Calculus tutorials. In this lesson, we'll be going over some more limits, and now we'll be actually solving some basic limits by using common factors. Now, this is basically what you really get into when you're dealing with limits. Now that we have the basis set for us, now that we understand what limits are, we can actually work with them and use them to our advantage. So let's start off with a simple limit. The limit as x goes to -2 of x squared plus 5x plus 6 over x squared plus 3x plus 2. Now, something like this can seem really daunting, especially if we try to go ahead and plug in -2, we'll see that -2 squared is 4 minus 10 plus 6. And on the bottom, again, we have 4 minus 6 plus 2. And that equals 0 over 0, which we can't deal with. So, as daunting as something like this might seem, we just have to break it down and look for a common factor. Now, something you might have noticed already is that each of these is a polynomial that you might already know how to factor. You should know how to do this if you're taking calculus. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you know how to break this down. X squared plus 5x plus 6 is going to go to x plus 3 times x plus 2 over x plus 2 times x plus 1. Now, okay, right away you should see that this limit as x goes to -2 is giving us trouble when we have these x plus 2 terms on the top and bottom. And the way we deal with this is we do what we were talking about in the previous videos, where we cancel two terms and see what would happen if we didn't have to deal with them. What would happen if we could get rid of these? Then this would become x plus 3 over x plus 1. And then if we go ahead and plug this in, our limit, -2 plus 3, that's going to be 1 over -2 plus 1 is -1. So that's going to equal -1. So that's our limit. There's the answer. And see, we get this huge problem, and as tricky as it might seem, all you have to do is break it down. Just look for ways to break it down on the top and bottom. Now, I'm going to erase this so I can give you another example where it's not as obvious how to break it down. Okay. So, this next one is pretty tricky, I think, but you guys will be able to handle it. Okay, limit as h goes to 0. On the top we have radical 5 plus h minus radical 5 over over h. Now this is a limit you'll really want to understand because this is going to come up a lot later in calculus. The limit I showed you before is how you deal with canceling factors, but here there's no clear factor here. There's no h in the top here that's just going to cancel with the h on the bottom. Now, it might seem like we have no choice, nothing to do here, but one thing you pretty much just have to memorize, the one thing you have to remember is when you see something that looks like this, something complicated with a single h on the bottom as h goes to 0, just multiply by the conjugate of the top. And what that means is for every term, for every set of terms, say this is x and this is y, the conjugate of x minus y is just going to be x plus y. So using this knowledge, the conjugate of this is going to be radical 5 plus h. Whoops, let me just get rid of this here. Our conjugate's going to be, I'll just redraw this. 5 plus h minus radical 5 over h. Now, I'm going to leave the limit up here for now, so I can just quickly do this calculation, but remember that we're going to bring this down later. So, anyways, now we're going to multiply by the conjugate here. Radical 5 plus h. Except now we're going to do plus radical 5. Okay, and then we have to do the same to the bottom to make sure that we're not breaking this equation. We still have the same thing we had before, we're just making it easier to deal with. So now, we simply multiply these two using FOIL. I'm sure you remember, so let's multiply the first. 5 plus h, radical 5 plus h plus radical, or times radical 5 plus h is going to be simply 5 plus h. Okay, so we have that. Now multiply the outsides. Negative radical 5 times radical 5 is just going to be negative 5. Inside, multiply these together, and we're going to get, we'll just do negative radical, I'll just multiply this in. So negative radical 25 plus 5h. Then first the outside, inside. Okay, last. Wait a minute. Sorry, I'm getting myself confused. The last inside, and okay, sorry. Okay, so now we're going to multiply the outside terms, and then we have this plus radical 25 plus 5h. Sorry, this rolled over here, but this is all under the radical. So as you can see, these two terms right here cancel. They're the same thing. So I'm just going to cross those out. And then on the bottom, let's continue multiplying. This is going to be a lot easier though. It's just going to be h times radical 5 plus h plus h radical 5. And then also this 5 and negative 5 cancel. We'll cross them off. So you can see here, this is starting to look a lot easier. We'll bring this down. H over h times 5 plus h, radical 5 plus h, plus h radical 5. Ooh, okay, so now we can see if we want our limit as h goes to 0. We can see that these h's cancel, and what we're left with is 1 over radical 5 plus h plus radical 5. Now, all we do is plug this 0 in, so I'm going to bring this over here so we have some room. Plug the h in for 0, 1 over radical 5 plus 0, which is going to be radical 5, plus radical 5. So our answer is going to be 1 over 2 radical 5. Now, this seems like a really crazy process. You might be looking at the screen right now thinking, how am I supposed to remember this? But all you have to remember are, when you see something like this is a really common form where you have something plus h minus something that looks like the first part over h, or it could be x or y, whatever you have here for your variable. All you have to remember is try to cancel h's, try to cancel common factors, try to factor as much as possible on the top and bottom so you can get something to cancel. And if that doesn't work and you have something like this, just remember, multiply by the conjugate. That's probably the biggest tip I can give you. So I'm just going to put that over here. That's the trick to solving these kinds of questions. Multiply by the conjugate, you have x minus y, multiply by x plus y, this form. So if we go back, all I did was multiply by the conjugate of the top, the more complicated annoying part, for the top and bottom, and then just worked it out with algebra, and everything cancels. And we got down to this, plug it in. So it's really not as bad as it looks. It's just that you have to not get overwhelmed by these kinds of examples in your textbook and realize that all they're trying to get you to do is just multiply by this conjugate. Okay, so that should be a pretty good introduction for this. Please go over and rewatch this video if you don't understand certain parts, because this is really important. And if you still have questions, leave a comment and I can create additional videos covering this. Alright, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.